Assalamu alaikum and good evening to you all. Welcome to the 11th episode of Health Talk. Health Talk is a health educational program organized by SCB Bangladesh chapter and supported by Bangladesh Society of Medicine. I am Dr. Prince Kawser. I'll be the host of the show tonight. On tonight's episode, we'll be discussing about the most important topic of the year. So don't miss any part of today's program and invite your doctor friends or colleagues to join the program with you. The speaker of today's program is a very talented physician, Dr. Mohammad Azad sir. He is the Associate Professor of Medicine, Rajshahi Medical College. He will be discussing today on adult immunization and upcoming COVID-19 vaccination, which you can guess the most important topic of the year. As the chairperson, we have undoubtedly one of the best physicians of the world and the former governor of SCB Bangladesh chapter, my mentor, Professor Quazi Tarikul Islam sir. He is also the former president of Bangladesh Society of Medicine. As one of the panelists, we have someone who is a big inspiration to all the young doctors of our country. It's none other than the Professor Khan Abul Kalam Azad sir. He is the governor-elect SCB Bangladesh chapter and former president of Bangladesh Society of Medicine. We also have Professor Billal Alam sir as another panelist with us. He is the current president of Bangladesh Society of Medicine and professor of medicine, Dhaka Medical College. Today's program will be moderated by our very own Dr. Mohammad Anwarul Bari sir. He is the associate professor of medicine, Sir Solimullah Medical College. During the live session, you can ask topic-related questions in the comment section. We shall try to answer them in the question and answer session, which will start right after the presentation. So, without doing any further delay, let me hand over the session to Dr. Mohammad Anwarul Bari sir to moderate today's program. Dr. Mohammad Anwarul Bari sir.
Thank you, Prince, for inviting me to moderate today's program. I am very much delighted to have with me the very renowned and all of them are my teacher in postgraduate and undergraduate level. I would like to invite you to today's program, Health Talk 11 episode. All of you know we are living in a new reality since January 2020. After COVID pandemic started, it took almost 2 million lives. And every step of our life is in jeopardy, and people are desperately trying to normalize their life. And vaccine possibly the only solution by which we can normalize again. So with this view, today's topic, the health talk, is adult immunization and upcoming COVID-19 vaccination. Today, I have with me Chairperson. He is the person, none other than Professor Quazi Tarikul Islam. He is my teacher, and he is a teacher for most of the internists of this country. He is behind every disease outbreak in our country for the last few years, and he is the former professor and head of Department of Medicine, Dhaka Medical College, former president of Bangladesh Society of Medicine, former governor of ACP Bangladesh chapter, and today he is serving as a professor of medicine in Popular Medical College Hospital. I have with me another two panelists who are also my teacher. First of all, I would like to introduce Professor Billal Alam sir, who is the ex-successful principal Sir Solimullah Medical College. He is the professor and head of the Department of Medicine, Dhaka Medical College, and he is the current president of Bangladesh Society of Medicine. I have another panelist who is our favorite teacher, Professor Khan Abul Kalam Azad. He is just completed his successful tenure as a principal in Dhaka Medical College. He is the former president of Bangladesh Society of Medicine, and he is the governor-elect ACP Bangladesh chapter. Now, I would like to introduce our speaker, Dr. Azizul Azad sir. He is one of the talented internal medicine specialists in Bangladesh. He is working as associate professor of medicine, Rajshahi Medical College Hospital. Today, without delay, I would like to invite Dr. Azizul Azad sir to present today's talk. Dr. Azizul Azad sir.
Thank you, Dr. Bari.
Respected
Chairperson, my mentor, Professor Quazi Tarikul Islam sir, honorable panelists, Professor Khan Abul Kalam Azad sir, and Professor Billal Alam sir, moderator, and my dear audience, good evening. I'm Dr. Azizul Azad, and I'm going to talk about adult immunization and upcoming COVID-19 vaccination today. If we look back just about 200 years, we'll know that global life expectancy was about 30 years in the 1800s, and in 2019, it was approaching about 73 years. This dramatic improvement is due mostly to effective management and prevention of infectious disease. Richard Easterlin, a famous economist, has termed it the mortality revolution. And vaccines played an important role in the mortality revolution. If you look at this figure, you know the major diseases that declined before 1945 in England are mostly the vaccine preventable infectious diseases, including the smallpox. And according to WHO, smallpox was one of the most devastating diseases of the humanity ever known. It has been ravaging, causing death and devastation for several thousands of years. And Pharaoh Ramesses V of Egypt was thought to be one of the earliest known victims of the smallpox. His mummy showed obvious features of pockmark. And not only the Egypt, in recent past, in the 15th and the 16th century, smallpox was transported to America by the Christopher Columbus, and it also went to the Inca civilization by Francisco Pizarro, the Spaniard. And the Pulitzer Prize winning author Jared Diamond thinks not only the guns of the Spaniards, but also the smallpox, which causes fall of the Inca Empire, which destroyed the American Indians. Luckily, in 1796 we had a breakthrough. Edward Jenner, he noticed that the milkmaid who was exposed to smallpox, who was exposed to cowpox, never developed smallpox. And he started clinical trial. He ran the clinical trial for 2 years, and in 1796, he published his presentation on the smallpox vaccination. And he said that I hope that someday the practice of producing cowpox in human beings will spread over the world. And when the day comes, there will be no more smallpox. But we have to wait for another 200 years, about another 200 years. In 1980, WHO declared the world free of smallpox. And it is the only infectious disease that has been eradicated from the world so far. If you look at the history of the vaccine development, smallpox was in 1798, influenza vaccine was developed in 1936, and the polio vaccine was in 1955. And lots of vaccine in the recent past, as you can see. And pneumococcal disease vaccine, 13-valent pneumococcal conjugate was developed in 2010. The Spanish flu pandemic, the famous Spanish flu pandemic of 1918 to 1920 killed 20 to 50 million people. And most of the deaths during Spanish flu pandemic were due to complicating bacterial pneumonia. And now we know that both the influenza and bacterial pneumonia are vaccine preventable disease, and we have the vaccines with us. Globally, every year, 290,000 to 650,000 people die from influenza. And the influenza season in Bangladesh starts from April and lasts up to September, with a peak in July and August. Unlike the Western countries, where the influenza season starts in October. United States Advisory Committee on Immunization Practices, called ACIP, recommends influenza vaccine for all individuals 6 months of age and older. High-risk individuals, their close contacts, and healthcare workers should remain high-priority populations in influenza vaccination campaigns. So when influenza vaccine supply is short, some people have priority in the influenza vaccination. People who are between 6 to 5 years of age, people who are 50 or above years of age, people having chronic pulmonary disease, including asthma, COPD, cardiovascular disease, except hypertension, renal, hepatic, hematologic or neurologic disorder, epilepsy, stroke, patients who are immunocompromised, patients who are pregnant or will be pregnant in the next influenza season, they are at the high risk for influenza-related complications and should be vaccinated with influenza vaccine. We now have two types of influenza vaccine. One is the inactivated influenza vaccine, and another is live influenza vaccine. But we must remember that we should avoid live vaccines in the pregnant and the immunocompromised patients. In a 2012 meta-analysis, the efficacy of influenza vaccine was shown to be around 59%. Now we have two kinds of pneumococcal vaccine. One is the pneumococcal polysaccharide vaccine, also called PPSV, and the pneumococcal conjugate vaccine, known as PCV. PPSV is composed of partially purified pneumococcal capsular polysaccharide, PPSV23, available in the name of Pneumovax. It is the most widely available formulation and contains 23 pneumococcal polysaccharides. PCV13 is composed of pneumococcal capsular polysaccharides covalently linked or conjugated to a protein, which is an adjuvant, which increases immunogenicity of the vaccine. Vaccination of adults with a 23-valent pneumococcal polysaccharide vaccine protects 50 to 85% of relatively healthy adult recipients against invasive pneumococcal disease. And if you look at the graph, the invasive pneumococcal disease incidence among adults aged 65 years or more by pneumococcal serotype in the United States from 1998 to 2017, there is dramatic reduction of invasive pneumococcal disease because widespread of use of PCV13 and PPSV23 in the US population. So what are the indications of pneumococcal vaccine? Should we vaccinate all people? No. Pneumococcal vaccination is not recommended for healthy adults under the age of 65 years. The current ACIP recommendations call for PPSV23 vaccination of adults between 90 to 64 years if they have a high-risk condition. So what are the high-risk conditions? The high-risk conditions are chronic heart disease such as heart failure and cardiomyopathy, excluding hypertension alone, chronic lung disease such as asthma and COPD, chronic liver disease, poorly controlled diabetes mellitus, current cigarette smoking, and alcohol use disorders. So in these patients, if the patients are between 90 to 64 years, we should give PPSV23. Should we revaccinate with PPSV23? Yes. A one-time revaccination dose of PPSV23 is recommended 5 years after the first dose for persons with functional or anatomic asplenia and for immunocompromised patients. Anatomic asplenia, the splenectomy, the functional hyposplenism occurs in celiac disease, in dermatitis herpetiformis, and sickle cell disease. Pneumococcal vaccination is also indicated in the immunocompromised patients. But in the immunocompromised patients, we must give PCV13 first, followed by PPSV23 8 or more weeks later. Patients having HIV infection, chronic kidney disease, especially nephrotic syndrome, hematologic malignancies like leukemia, lymphoma, multiple myeloma, GLS malignancy like patients with solid tumors treated with chemotherapy, solid organ transplantation, stem cell transplantation, iatrogenic immunosuppression, including long-term systemic glucocorticoid use, radiation, disease-modifying agents as used in autoimmune inflammatory rheumatic diseases, congenital and acquired immunodeficiency. These are the conditions when we should use PCV13 first, followed by PPSV23, because PCV13 will increase the immunogenicity and will increase the response rate of PPSV23. So if the patient is 65 years of age or older, then all adults are eligible for a dose of PPSV23 at the age of 65, regardless of previous PPSV23 vaccination. However, a minimum interval of 5 years between PPSV23 doses should be maintained. They usually do not require PCV13 unless they have another indication for PCV13 like immunocompromised state, asplenia, CSF leak, or history of invasive pneumococcal disease. So what should be the interval? I have already told that in patients who are at high risk for pneumococcal infection, waiting only 8 weeks between PCV13 and PPSV23 are recommended. For all other patients, PPSV23 should be given 1 year after PCV13. PCV13 enhances the immune response to the polysaccharide vaccine by stimulating memory B cells and priming the immune system. As internists, we all deal with lots of autoimmune inflammatory rheumatic diseases. So we have to remember the 2019 update of the EULAR recommendations for vaccinations in adult patients with autoimmune inflammatory rheumatic disease. And this guideline says that vaccination in patients with AIIRD should preferably be administered during quiescent disease. Vaccines should preferably be administered before planned immunosuppression, in particular B-cell depleting therapy like rituximab. Non-live vaccines can be safely provided to autoimmune inflammatory rheumatic disease patients regardless of the underlying therapy, but live attenuated vaccines may be considered with caution. Influenza and pneumococcal vaccine should be strongly considered for the majority of the patients with autoimmune inflammatory rheumatic disease. Unfortunately, this is rarely prescribed in Bangladesh, except by the rheumatologists. I think we should increase our influenza and pneumococcal vaccination prescription in patients with inflammatory rheumatic diseases. Patients who have not received pneumococcal vaccine previously administer PCV13 first, followed in 8 weeks later by PPSV23. Administer second dose of PPSV23 at least 5 years after PPSV23 first dose. Other vaccines that should in patients with autoimmune inflammatory rheumatic diseases are tetanus vaccine, hepatitis A vaccine, hepatitis B vaccine, human papilloma vaccine, and varicella vaccines. But varicella vaccine, as there is a live attenuated vaccine, it should be used with caution. So what are the indications of meningococcal vaccine? In the United States, vaccination to prevent meningococcal disease is routinely recommended for all adolescents and young adults. For patients with anatomical or functional asplenia, HIV infection, persistent complement component deficiency, two-dose series of men A, C, Y, and W at least 8 weeks apart should be given, and patients should be revaccinated every 5 years if risk remains. Planned travel in countries with hyperendemic or epidemic meningococcal disease, one dose men ACWY should be given. And we routinely give meningococcal vaccination to Hajj travelers. All the first-year college students who live in residential housing and military recruits living in barracks should receive one dose of men ACWY vaccine. What is the effectiveness of meningococcal vaccine? Overall effectiveness is about 69% within 8 years of vaccination. Varicella vaccine is indicated in adolescents 13 or more years and in adults. The two doses are usually separated by 4 to 8 weeks. But we have to remember, live varicella vaccine is contraindicated in severely immunocompromised patients and during pregnancy. Hepatitis B vaccine is a very common vaccine, and the two conventional hepatitis B vaccine is Engerix B and Recombivax HB. They use an aluminum adjuvant, whereas the most recently approved vaccine, that is Hep B CpG, uses a novel immunostimulatory adjuvant. The conventional hepatitis B vaccines require 3 doses, 0, 1, and 6 months. They must be given in the intramuscularly, preferably in the deltoid muscle in the adults, and vastus lateralis in case of children. Hepatitis B CpG vaccine, as it has immunostimulatory adjuvant, only 2 doses is enough, 0 and 1 month. But Hep B CpG vaccine is not currently available in Bangladesh. So what if the patient misses a dose? If there is any interruption in the hepatitis B vaccination, it does not require restarting the entire series of vaccination or adding extra doses. If interrupted after the first dose, the second dose should be administered as soon as possible. If only the third dose is delayed, it should be administered when convenient. The final antibody concentrations are not reduced in case of longer than recommended intervals between doses. Patients on hemodialysis should receive a higher dose of the conventional hepatitis B vaccine. Our conventional hepatitis B vaccine contains 20 microgram of SBSAG, but patients with hemodialysis receive 40 microgram, that is 2 doses of hepatitis B vaccine. So should we routinely test anti-SBS antibody after giving the hepatitis B vaccine? For most patients, it is not necessary because recombinant hepatitis B vaccine has a response rate in more than 90% of patients. But in selected patients, we can test for anti-HBs. Post-vaccination testing 1 to 2 months after completing the primary vaccination series is indicated in healthcare workers, in patients on chronic hemodialysis, spouse or sex partners of HBsAg positive persons, immunocompromised patients, newborns of HBsAg positive mothers who are vaccinated at birth. And how do you assess the adequate response? The anti-HBs titer 10 or more milli-international unit per ml is the adequate response. Should we give booster dose of hepatitis B vaccine? No. For immunocompetent children and adults, booster dose is not routinely recommended. But booster dose should be administered if the patient is on hemodialysis and if the patient is immunocompromised with an ongoing risk of exposure and their anti-HBs titer has fallen to less than 10 milli-international unit per ml. Other than these two group of patients, we do not need any booster dose. What if the patient does not respond at all to hepatitis B vaccine? We should give a second vaccine series, 0, 1, 6 months. But after giving the second vaccine series, we must retest for anti-HBs titer to check whether the patient responded to the hepatitis B vaccine this time. What is the duration of protection? Although anti-HBs titer decreases with time, the duration of protection is long. Among those who responded to the initial vaccine series, protection has been estimated to persist for up to 30 years. And any new infection during this time will be uh, dealt with massive increase in the anti-HBs antibody and clearance of hepatitis B. So, what to do if a healthcare worker or any person has accidental needle stick injury from a hepatitis B positive patients? The risk of developing serologic evidence of hepatitis B infection after a percutaneous injury ranges from 37 to 62% if the source patient is both HBsAg and HBeAg positive. And if the patient is HBsAg positive but HBeAg negative, the risk is lower. It's about 23 to 37%. So if the healthcare professional has anti-HBs titer 10 milliunit per ml at the time of percutaneous exposure, no post-exposure hepatitis B management is necessary. So this is the first thing we should do. If after needle stick injury, we should check the anti-HBs titer of the healthcare worker. If it is more than 10, no further treatment is necessary. If the healthcare worker has anti-HBs titer less than 10 MIU per ml and the source patient is HBsAg positive or has an unknown HBsAg status, the healthcare professional should receive 1 dose of hepatitis B immunoglobulin and be revaccinated as soon as possible after the exposure. Rabies vaccine. Rabies is still common in our country. So pre-exposure prophylaxis should be done by human diploid cell vaccine or purified chick embryo cell vaccine 1 ml intramuscularly in the deltoid area on day 0, 7, and day 21 or 28. Post-exposure prophylaxis, after the animal bite, we have to give 1 dose of the vaccine intramuscularly on day 0, 3, 7, 14, and 28. And rabies immunoglobulin should also be given concurrently. Human papillomavirus vaccine. We have quadrivalent HPV vaccine available as Gardasil. It targets HPV type 6, 11, 16, and 18. And HPV vaccine is known to reduce the incidence of carcinoma cervix, anal, and penile cancer. ACIP recommends routine HPV vaccination for all females and males in the following age ranges. Routine HPV vaccination is recommended at 11 to 12 years. And those who fail to be vaccinated at 11 to 12 years, catch-up vaccination for adolescents and adults should be done between age 13 to 26 years. 2 to 3 doses of HPV vaccine are given, 0 to 6 months for people who are vaccinated before the age of 15, and 3 doses, 0, 2, and 6 months for people who are being vaccinated after the age of 15. Dengue vaccine, Dengvaxia. One dengue vaccine has been licensed, that is Dengvaxia, developed by Sanofi Pasteur, and two vaccines are in phase 3 trials. Dengvaxia is a live recombinant tetravalent dengue vaccine, but the problem is that World Health Organization recommends that the vaccine should only be given to persons with confirmed prior dengue virus infection. People who have not been previously infected with the dengue virus may be at risk of developing severe dengue if they get dengue after being vaccinated. And this mechanism, uh, mechanism of this severe dengue after being vaccinated is antibody dependent enhancement caused by the vaccine itself. So, what about the vaccination during pregnancy? Ideally, women should be vaccinated prior to conception, but some immunizations are routinely recommended for all pregnant women, like tetanus, diphtheria, acellular pertussis vaccine, and influenza vaccine. As DPT is routinely given all children in our country, we, should, we should give only tetanus vaccine and influenza vaccine during pregnancy. These immunizations have a good safety profile in pregnancy, but we again remind you that live attenuated vaccines should be avoided in pregnancy. This is the recommended adult immunization schedule by age group in the United States 2020. I've already discussed all of them. So now we are coming to another important topic, that is the COVID-19 vaccine. This is the landscape of COVID-19 candidate vaccines, and currently number of vaccines that are in the clinical development stage is 63, and number of vaccines in the preclinical development stage is 173. And the most common type of vaccine, candidate vaccine, is protein subunit vaccine, viral vector non-replicating vaccine, inactivated virus vaccine, messenger RNA vaccines. COVID-19 vaccine was a race against time in the middle of death and devastation. As you can look back, it took about 100 years to develop a vaccine against typhoid fever, about 90 years to develop a vaccine against meningitis, about 30 to 40 years to develop a vaccine against polio, about 15 years for hepatitis B, and it took just 1 year to develop a vaccine against COVID-19. So these are the vaccine platforms used for SARS-CoV-2, and the most common platforms I've already discussed, that uh, inactivated vaccines, vector-based vaccines, RNA vaccines, and replication incompetent vector vaccines, and the protein subunit vaccines. This is the trial result, phase 3 trial results published in New England Journal of Medicine. On 30th December 2020, the vaccine of Moderna, a messenger RNA 1273, phase 3 trial data was published in NEJM. And on 31st December, the vaccine of Pfizer BioNTech, phase 3 trial data was published in New England Journal of Medicine. And these vaccines had 94.1 to 95% efficacy in preventing laboratory confirmed symptomatic COVID-19 after the second dose. The efficacy was 94.1% for Moderna vaccine and 95% efficacy for Pfizer BioNTech vaccine. And both of these vaccines received emergency use authorization in the United States in December 2020. And Pfizer BioNTech vaccine has been given emergency use authorization by World Health Organization. What is the dose schedule of messenger RNA vaccines? The Pfizer BioNTech COVID-19 vaccine is administered in 2 intramuscular doses of 0.3 ml each, given 3 weeks apart. And Moderna COVID-19 vaccine is administered in 2 IM doses of 0.5 ml each, given 1 month apart. But we have to remember that if we start one vaccine series, it should be completed with the same vaccine. We cannot take one messenger RNA vaccine, one Oxford vaccine like that. Why messenger RNA vaccines might not be the first choice for Bangladesh? Because it is relatively more expensive. It costs about 20 to 25 US dollar. It needs an expensive cold chain system because Pfizer BioNTech vaccine needs to be stored at minus 70 degrees Celsius, but it can be stored for 5 days only with a very high temperature. with refrigeration at 2 to 8 degrees Celsius. Modern vaccine is to be stored at minus 20 degrees Celsius, but 30 days with refrigeration at 2 to 8 degrees Celsius because messenger RNA is very sensitive to temperature. Now let's talk about the vaccine of AstraZeneca with the University of Oxford. This is the phase 3 trial results published in Lancet. And the vaccine of Oxford was based on replication incompetent chimpanzee adenovirus containing genetic sequences of a wild-type version of the spike protein. In participants who received 2 standard doses, vaccine efficacy was 62%. In participants who received a low dose followed by a standard dose, efficacy was 90%. We don't know why. And overall, the vaccine efficacy across both groups was 70.4%. The Oxford vaccines do not contain any human or animal products, so it should be acceptable to people of all religion, as it does not contain any human or animal products. So it has been shown that 21 days after first dose and less than 14 days after the second dose, Oxford vaccine, there was no hospitalization and no severe COVID-19 in the recipients of Oxford vaccine. So this is a good slide to show the efficacy of Oxford vaccine in preventing severe COVID and preventing hospitalization. What are the adverse effects of Oxford vaccine? The injection site pain is common: fatigue, headache, myalgia, chills, fever, and joint pain. None of them very severe. What are the strength and weakness of Oxford AstraZeneca vaccine? The strength is it has reasonable efficacy, it is safe and well tolerated, it can be stored in routine refrigerator cold chain, and it is relatively cheap. But the weakness is only 12.1% of those assessed for efficacy were older than 55 years. So more data is needed regarding efficacy of Oxford vaccine in older adults. And another weakness is the discrepancy of the results. Why efficacy is lower in the standard 2-dose arm than the half dose followed by the standard dose arm? This thing remain unexplained till date. What are the potential problems of vector-based vaccines? So vectors may be partially neutralized by pre-existing vector immunity. Like if we use adenovirus as a vector and the vaccine recipients already had an adenovirus infection, so he or she will have antibody against adenovirus. So the vaccine containing the adenovirus vector will be partially neutralized by the pre-existing immunity, resulting in decreased efficacy of the vaccine. But it can be minimized by using animal viruses, as it is done in the Oxford vaccine. In the Oxford vaccine, they have used chimpanzee virus. So it doesn't cause infection to the humans. So there is no pre-existing antibody in the humans. Or we can use vector types that are rare in humans. So there is less chance of pre-existing immunity. Or it does not induce much immunity, like adenovirus associated virus. Even when it causes infection in the humans, it does not induce neutralizing antibody. So it can be used as a vector. Vector immunity can be problematic when 2-dose regimens are used, because immunity against the vector formed after the first dose may make the second dose less effective, because the neutralizing antibody will may destroy the vector. So that is why Russians came up with a unique idea. The Sputnik V of Russia, they used 2 different human adenoviral vectors, adenovirus 26 and adenovirus 5, so that antibody against adenovirus 26 does not destroy the adenovirus 5. So the vaccine efficacy will be higher. Theoretically, it is a very attractive candidate vaccine. Efficacy is claimed to be more than 90%. Phase 3 results have not been published in the literature yet, but the liquid form of Sputnik V need to be stored at minus 18 degrees Celsius, and the dry powder form can be stored at 2 to 8 degrees Celsius. That is the normal freeze. This is a data of the Sputnik V. If you use one vaccine based on adenovirus 5, the immunity is like this, one shot. If you give two shots of adenovirus 26 vector-based vaccine, the efficacy will be higher. And if you use Sputnik V, adenovirus 26 plus adenovirus 5, the efficacy is much higher, much higher amount of neutralizing antibody will be produced. So this is called prime boost immunization approach. So currently we have three Chinese vaccines. One is developed by the Sinopharm. This is an inactivated vaccine. Sinopharm itself claimed that it is 79% effective, but the UAE trial showed 86% efficacy. Sinovac is another vaccine, which is inactivated vaccine, and the efficacy rate is lower than the Sinopharm vaccine. It was about 50% in the Brazilian trial and 65% in the Indonesian trial. CanSino Biologics has developed a vaccine along with Military Research Unit of China, and the trade name is Convidecia, and they use adenovirus type 5 vector, and the phase 3 trial is still ongoing. Interestingly, Johnson & Johnson, they have produced a vaccine based on adenovirus 26 vector, which they claim is a single dose vaccine. Just a single shot is enough to prevent the severe COVID and to prevent the hospitalization. The neutralizing antibody titers against wild type virus were detected in 90% or more of all participants on day 29 after the first vaccine dose and reached 100% by day 57. And this vaccine triggered the development of antibodies in 96% of participants aged 65 years or older. So for older population, Johnson & Johnson vaccine can be a very good vaccine candidate. The phase 3 trial, that is ensemble trial, is ongoing. And the pharmaceutical company of Johnson & Johnson, that is known as Janssen, they plan to produce more than 1 billion doses of vaccine in 2021. And they are also conducting a separate trial that is called Ensemble 2 trial, which will compare a single dose Johnson & Johnson vaccine with 2-dose vaccine to see whether there is any difference between 1 dose or 2-dose vaccine schedule. Protein subunit vaccine, a very fascinating vaccine developed by the Novavax, NVX-CoV2373. Novavax is an American company based on Maryland. It consists of spike protein linked with matrix M1 adjuvant wrapped in a nanoparticle envelope. Novavax done a very unique job. They have purchased the gene sequence from GeneScript. GeneScript is a biotech company which sells all the genetic materials for research. They have purchased the genetic sequence for spike protein. They have inserted the genetic sequence in a Baku virus, and they have inserted the Baku virus in moth cells. Inside the moth cells, huge number of spike protein is produced. They have separated the spike protein. They have added matrix M1 adjuvant, and the whole thing is packaged in a nanoparticle envelope. A fascinating thing. So the preliminary data of Novavax vaccine is very promising. It produces a very high titer of neutralizing antibody. Actually, the highest titer of neutralizing antibody among all COVID vaccines is produced by this Novavax vaccine. And phase 2B trial result will be published shortly. Novavax announced initiation of Prevent 19 phase 2 efficacy trial in the USA and Mexico. And before the phase 3 trial, Australia has already ordered 51 million doses because theoretically it's a very good vaccine. It should be a very good vaccine. So what are the COVID-19 vaccines that can be stored at 2 to 8 degrees Celsius temperature? So the vaccines of AstraZeneca with the University of Oxford, which has already come to our country, Sinopharm vaccine, Sinovac, CanSino Bio, all the three Chinese vaccines, Novavax vaccine, Johnson & Johnson vaccine, and Sanofi GSK vaccines can be stored at normal freeze. So if we summarize the clinical trial data of the COVID-19 vaccines, in terms of neutralizing antibodies elicited by the vaccine candidates, inactivated vaccines and adenovirus 5 vaccine candidates are at the lower end. Chadoc's nCoV-19, that is the Oxford vaccine, and the messenger RNA candidates are in the medium range, and the recombinant protein vaccine candidate, that is the Novavax vaccine, is at the high end, eliciting the greatest titer of neutralizing antibodies. Should we vaccinate individuals with a history of SARS-CoV-2 infection? Yes, individuals with a SARS-CoV-2 infection should still receive one of these vaccines. Pre-vaccination serologic screening is not recommended. If SARS-CoV-2 infection is diagnosed following the first vaccine dose, the second dose should still be given. But delay vaccination for 90 days from the time of COVID-19 infection to allow others to receive the first dose of their vaccine, as the risk of reinfection appears extremely low during this interval. The ACIP also suggests that individuals who receive monoclonal antibody, bamlanivimab, we know that President Trump has received bamlanivimab while he was hospitalized with COVID-19, or convalescent plasma therapy for COVID-19, they should also delay vaccination for 19 days from the time of receiving the bamlanivimab or the convalescent plasma therapy. Is there any chance of antibody-dependent enhancement with COVID-19 vaccine? No. There are no reports of antibody-dependent enhancement with the use of COVID-19 candidate vaccine in non-human primates and humans. So unlike dengue vaccine, there is no chance of ADE in case of COVID-19 vaccine. Is COVID-19 vaccine safe in children and pregnant individuals? Safety has not been established in children or pregnant individuals. The decision to vaccinate individuals 16 years or older who are pregnant or breastfeeding should be made on a case-by-case basis. Should we vaccinate immunosuppressed individuals? Yes, eligible individuals with an immunocompromising condition should still receive a COVID-19 vaccine. Now, a very important topic. Should we delay or not to delay the second dose of the COVID-19 vaccine? That is a very burning question because on 30th December, the 4 UK chief medical officers announced that the second dose of COVID-19 vaccines should be given towards the end of 12 weeks rather than in the previously recommended 3 to 4 weeks time. The Joint Committee on Vaccination and Immunization, JCVI, in the United Kingdom, they recommends that first vaccine dose should be prioritized for all eligible individuals prior to securing a second vaccine dose for recipients. So next question comes, is it scientifically based, evidence-based? Yes, there is some evidence that after a subgroup analysis, researchers have shown that vaccine efficacy 14 days after the second dose was higher in the group that had more than 6 weeks gap between the two doses than in the group that had less than 6 weeks gap between the doses. So if we increase the interval between doses, the vaccine efficacy will be higher. There is some evidence for that. So how to counsel the patients? So vaccine recipients should be advised that side effects are common, and side effects include local and systemic reactions, including pain at injection site, fever, fatigue, headache. But these are self-limiting, and none of them are life-threatening. Anaphylaxis is extremely rare, but it has been reported from messenger RNA vaccines, especially from Pfizer-BioNTech vaccines, but the incidence is still very low, 1 in every 1,000 vaccination. But if anaphylaxis occurs after the first dose, second dose should not be given. And the anaphylaxis of the messenger RNA vaccine is due to the polyethylene glycol component of the vaccine. So this is a very important thing that currently we are seeing that many of our people has become anti-vaccine. So we have to keep reminding patients that a short period of discomfort due to vaccination is a whole lot better than a visit to the ICU and fighting for your breath. This is very important. Otherwise, many patients will refuse to get vaccinated. What is the duration of protection by COVID-19 vaccines? Actually, it's still too early to say what is the exact duration of protection, but we know that from natural infection, after natural infection, both memory T cell and B cell, they persist for up to 6 months after natural infection. And similar T and B cell responses might be expected following vaccination. But we have to remember then even the antibodies level are declining, T cell immune responses are sustained, implying that some immunity persists. Because if T cells immunity persists, it will quickly send signal to the B cell, which will proliferate and produce antibody rapidly. How effective is just one dose? So, the efficacy of the Pfizer BioNTech vaccine was 52.4% between the first and second dose. But the most of the vaccine failures were in the days immediately after the first dose. That is because many patients become careless after taking the first dose, and so they become infected. So, if you rule out these patients who become careless and become infected, we'll find that the actual efficacy after first dose will be higher. The short-term protection starts around day 10. And looking at the data from day 15 to day 21, it is calculated that the efficacy against symptomatic COVID-19 was around 89%, very high. So after taking the first dose, we should ask all the patients to continue taking the standard precaution again against COVID-19, to wear mask, use the hand sanitizer, wash hands, everything. Medicine and Healthcare Regulatory Authority of UK claims that efficacy of the Oxford AstraZeneca vaccine against symptomatic COVID-19 22 days after single dose is 73%. So this is the basis of the delaying the second dose. The Medicine and Healthcare Products Regulatory Authority, they think that after 22 days, they have done a subgroup analysis of their trial, and they found that after 22 days, the efficacy is 73%. That's quite good. Does available COVID-19 vaccines induce mucosal immunity? No, because we know that natural infection goes through the nasopharynx. So nasopharynx is mostly protected by IgA1, and the lungs is mostly protected by IgG1. Natural infection produces both IgA1 antibody and IgA1 and IgG1. Both types of antibodies are produced in natural infection. But in case of intradermal or intramuscular vaccination, only IgG1 antibody will be produced. So here comes another option. Can we uh, create an intranasal vaccination to protect both the upper airway and lower airway? How should we counsel our patients about their behavior after COVID-19 vaccination? We have to tell them, like all medicines, no vaccine is completely effective. So you should continue to take recommended precautions to avoid infection. Some people may still get COVID-19 despite having a vaccination, but this should be less severe. So COVAX was a platform formed by Coalition of Epidemic Preparedness and Innovation, Global Alliance for Vaccine and Immunization, and World Health Organization, with the aim to provide vaccination to all members of the humanity throughout the whole world. Because with a fast-moving pandemic, no one is safe unless everyone is safe. Unfortunately, we haven't received any vaccine from the COVAX yet, because even if we have a COVID-19 vaccine, we don't have a vaccine against vaccine politics. And if you want to safeguard us from the vaccine politics, we have to establish our own National Institute of Biotechnology and Nanotechnology. And we should encourage our private sectors to work more with the biotechnology and nanotechnology so that we can produce our own vaccine. So we are at the end of our presentation. So finally, I would like to share the barriers of immunization in adulthood. One of the important barriers is lack of recognition of the importance of adult immunization, and lack of recommendation from healthcare providers, lack of healthcare providers' knowledge about adult immunization, lack of understanding of vaccine safety and efficacy, lack of government-funded vaccine for adults, lack of coordinated immunization programs for the adults, and anti-vaccine mindset of some part of population, which is a very delicate issue and which should be dealt with very sophisticated social engineering. So if we can remove all the barriers, we think we can vaccinate a lot of adults, and we can prevent a lot of vaccine preventable disease, and we can improve the quality of human life. Thank you very much.
Thank you so much, sir, for your amazing presentation. Now it's time for the question and answer session. These are the questions that you asked during the live session in the comment section. Now I would like to request Dr. Anwarul Bari sir to start the question and answer session. Dr. Anwarul Bari sir.
We have a lot of questions to ask by our audience. One of the question is that it is about the simultaneous vaccination of pneumococcus and influenza, whether we can get in same day both pneumococcus and influenza vaccine in different arms.
Thank you, Bari. Yes, we can give influenza pneumococcal vaccine in the same time in different arms. No problem with that.
So another question is that our doctors who work in the COVID unit, whether they will give the influenza vaccine every year from now on.
Yes,
To
I think everyone should take influenza vaccine. There was a trial published, not yet published. It is found in the preprint server from Netherlands, and they say the patients who have received influenza vaccines are less likely to contract COVID-19. This is under peer review, so we cannot be certain, but it's safe. Influenza vaccine is safe, so I think we can take influenza vaccine. Everyone can take. No problem with that.
Sir, another very common question: a person suffered by COVID-19 should be vaccinated.
Yes, I've told in my presentation, he should also be vaccinated, but his priority will be less. He can wait for about 3 months, right? So that other people who are not being infected can be vaccinated first.
Sir, another question about the rabies. In case of rabies vaccine, if one person vaccinated recently but got bite by dog within few days, then what to do?
Okay. If he has completed the vaccination, there is just cleaning the wound, tetanus vaccination, and just antibiotics. That's all. If he has completed the vaccination. But if he has not completed the vaccination, then he must receive rabies immunoglobulin as well as the other vaccines.
Sir, another question is that all the vaccine is available in our country, all 13 vaccines. Which vaccine would you like to take?
Okay, personally, I've taken lots of vaccines. Personally, I've taken influenza vaccine this year, pneumococcal vaccine, meningococcal vaccine. Every year I take influenza vaccine for last 5 years or so. So I think these are very safe vaccines. None of them have any problem. So I advocate all the vaccines except dengue vaccine. Okay, so except dengue vaccine because of chance of antibody dependent enhancement. So I do not advocate dengue vaccine, but all other vaccines that I presented today, I think everyone should take.
Sir, regarding actually, if all the COVID vaccine is available in our country, in that case, which one will you like to take?
Oh, yes.
Yes.
If all the vaccines were available in our country, I'll definitely take Novavax because I'm a big fan of Novavax. And I'm also a very big fan of Sputnik V because of the technique they use. That's why these two are my two favorite vaccines. I think technically they are more accurate than the other vaccines.
So another very interesting question: can I get mRNA vaccine if vector-based vaccine fails to develop immunity?
Actually, how can you tell that vector-based vaccines fail to develop immunity? There's no way of testing, and the testing of antibody is not recommended. So it's a hypothetical question, actually. So yes, but if you start the vector-based vaccine, you should complete the vector-based vaccine. You should start messenger RNA vaccine. You should complete the messenger RNA vaccine schedule. You cannot mix the vector-based vaccine with messenger RNA vaccine.
So last question is that regarding the safety of vaccination we'll get in next week from Bangladesh.
Yes.
This is a big issue.
Yes, I think Oxford vaccine is very safe. So far, the adverse effects I have shown you, there is no serious adverse effects in the Oxford vaccine. So it's totally safe. I would definitely take Oxford vaccine if I get the chance. No problem
Sir,
with that. And
sir,
yes,
sir, I missed one question. Why side effect is more in second dose of vaccine? Is asked by one person.
well, after second dose, because immune system is already primed, so there is
Yes, sir.
a chance of yes, because of priming of the immune system of the first after the first dose, more severe symptoms like more pain, a little bit more fever, but not life-threatening. And these severe symptoms do not require hospitalization. A little bit of paracetamol, little bit of symptomatic treatment is enough to alleviate the symptoms. So there is no worry, nothing to be worried about the Oxford vaccine. Regarding the safety, nothing to be worried. But there is some worry about the messenger RNA vaccine because it may rarely cause anaphylaxis. But Oxford vaccine does not cause anaphylaxis. And the death that was reported during the trial that was unrelated to Oxford vaccine, the patient died totally unrelated to the vaccine. He has another illness and he died of another illness. It was not related to Oxford vaccine. So it's totally safe.
So with this, sir, we'd like to end the question answer session. Thank you again for your brilliant presentation, and you elaborate everything which is required about the COVID vaccination and also other adult vaccination. Now I'd like to go with our discussion. We are very sorry we couldn't connect our beloved Professor Billal sir due to the technical problem, but we have with us our favorite teacher, most respected professor of our country, Professor Khan Abul Kalam Azad. Now, I'd like to invite Professor Khan Abul Kalam Azad to say something about today's topics and about the presentation.
Thank you very much, Professor Anwarul Bari. First of all, a very good evening to everybody. And to tell you, frankly, a wonderful lecture, wonderful deliberation, and wonderful information. And from the beginning up to today, everything was depicted in a very nice way and wonderful question answer session. Definitely, many of the vaccines are well established from the beginning of your human civilization. If you see that everybody tried to produce some sort of vaccines because prevention it was very important, and many of the diseases they did not have any cure. Rather, we could discover the vaccines, and people were vaccinated globally, and that saved millions of lives. Though it's very true, only we could eradicate one or two diseases from the globe, but still there are many. And also, childhood immunization in Bangladesh is a very good story of success to prevent your childhood mortality. And also in adults, when we found that maternal mortality, along with other things which were taken to prevent maternal mortality, everything was there with our prevailing vaccines in our country. And so, to tell frankly, this was a very good recapitulation of the vaccines. And truly speaking, we could recapitulate so many points regarding every vaccine which are available in the market, most the common one. The question is that about the vaccination for COVID-19 infection. And truly speaking, you see, within less than 1 year time, we are getting some vaccines, and already people over many parts of the world are being vaccinated. And also, we received the first batch of vaccines as a gift from Indian government today, and it is already in the storeroom of your Director General of Health Services. It means that there will be a short trial, and ultimately there will be the beginning of the vaccination program. And truly speaking, the several factors, if you consider that a very good vaccine which is to be there in the market, there are some questions. What are the challenges? Let me talk a little bit about the challenges. Number one, the vaccine efficacy. So definitely people will be liking if there is lifelong immunity and if the vaccine is without side effects. Those two are the important criteria by which you can recognize a vaccine to be the most effective. But you know that the way the vaccines were discovered, and we found that the emergency uh, trial was done, and also the short period of trial was done, and then ultimately the vaccination work has been is being continuing in different parts. So definitely we got some lives over there, but there's still, you see that to whom it will be given, for how long the vaccination will work to provide the immunity. Those are the questions. So which one is the best? There may be some controversy, but some of the focuses were there by Professor Azizul Azad, describing a plus and minus of every vaccine so far being practiced to be given to the patients or the people. And number two is that you see that I will talk about the side effects. You know, people will talk much about the side effects, and they will say about that some people died of this type of vaccine. This is the vaccine. This is the vaccine. So that is one of the issues which is to be considered, and we found that the anaphylaxis is very less and only occurred in one or two vaccines. So that is a question, but still we have to take preparation to prevent these anaphylactic reactions in our patients will be vaccinated. And the next is that storage and distribution of the vaccines. That is also another challenge that will be very important, and that is to be well maintained by the government designated authorized commissions or something like that, so that they can provide the vaccines appropriately to appropriate places and the person. Because counterfeiting is a probability, and already Interpol has provided a red alert against this counterfeiting, and also people will be sending the vaccine to wrong places, and the people will be purchasing from the black market. And already who has described this vaccine as a liquid gold. So definitely, as the gold is, the very much popular among the black marketeers. So definitely, this vaccination may be one of the tools by which they can earn some money. So that is one of the issues that is to be strongly negotiated. And also another question is that the control of the social media. Social media provides many information, some of which are true, some mostly they are negative and not true. So the controlling the social media and providing correct information is one of the important aspects by which a very successful vaccination program can be achieved. So for that reason, that is one important issue by which we can control the social media. We can inform the people rightly and appropriately, so that people are interested to receive the vaccine. And finally, as because you know that the mindset of what was said by Professor Azizul Azad, that is your one term is called the vaccine hesitancy. So vaccine hesitancy, and in all the countries of the world, they will have 5 to 10% people who are not ready to receive the vaccine because they will not, uh, they will say that the negative things about the vaccine, and they will ask for that nobody should take the vaccine. So this vaccine hesitancy is one of the factors that is to be avoided. And I have seen many of the doctors also, they made some questions regarding this vaccine hesitancy. So whether they can take the vaccine themselves or not. So we should talk to the people, and every day when we are seeing the patient, we can talk about the vaccine very loudly, and we can provide some information to our patient in the evening. So if every physician plays a role regarding this, throwing of messages to the people, so definitely people will be ready to receive the vaccine. So that is one of the issues, and some challenges will still be there in advance. I don't want to say like that, But I know that people will be talking plus and minus about the vaccine. Some people will be receiving the vaccine, and when the second dose will be given, and that will be a question. And as because we know that after first dose, there should be a time range when the second dose is to be taken. So that is also another important issue and a challenge, because if the vaccines are not available at the time, so what to be done in those people? So suppose 90 days is the final day for receiving the second dose of vaccine. So if the person is not getting the vaccine within 90 days, what will happen to that person? So the vaccine availability for the first dose receivers should be within 90 days. That is to be also answered by the authorities. And finally, I will say that important part will be that this vaccine should be given under strict supervision of the government and government approved authorities, so that every single detail about the vaccination program should be documented, recorded, notified, and to be worked on that to provide better vaccination program for the coming days. So with these few words, I like to congratulate my beloved Dr. Azizul Haq Azad for his excellent presentation. It was a really so beautiful. I was amazed by the presentation, and I got so many information. I will request American College Bangladesh chapter to provide the whole presentation to us in a very good way, so that we can read it regularly, so that we can remember every aspect of this vaccination. And so we will need another program after 4 weeks time, when more information regarding this vaccination program will be there, and we can receive the current information. And definitely I like to finally congratulate Mr. Chairman sir, Professor Kaji Tarikul Islam. Your able leadership was one of the issues by which SCP chapter Bangladesh uh, made a promise, and it was made successful by Professor H.M. Nazmul Hassan, the person who works day and night to make this SCP program successful. What a devotion! I like to congratulate Professor H.M. Nazmul Hassan for his extraordinary endeavor to support us, to learn something, and what a way to teach us this type of your presentation. Thank you very much, Professor H.M. Nazmul Hassan, Professor Tarikul Islam, and Professor Anwarul Bari for your excellent anchoring, and Dr. Prince for your very smiling face and your presentation at the beginning. And so, with all this, I like to say, today I was in the exam hall of FCPS clinical exam, and to give you a very good news, 24 candidates came out successful. It never happened in the history of BCPS that so many candidates in one day could pass in FCPS final examination. 24 candidates. So it was a wonderful day in the midst of this corona infection. And then I had to join a combined meeting of American College of Physicians, India, Japan, Bangladesh. So I was also there for a long time. Then I could join here today. I don't know why this network is very unstable, but still I could come to the end up to this point. So again, from the heart, I like to congratulate everybody for your everything. Thank you very much. I hope that this will continue in future. Aziz, Hakazat, thank you very much,
Sir.
my lovely
Thank you,
boy.
sir.
Thank you very
Thank you,
much.
sir.
Assalamu alaikum, Mr. Chairman, sir. Many regards and thanks to you, sir. Also, thank you very much. Sir.
Thank, thank you, sir, for your brilliant comments and also elaboration. Now we are at the end of the session. I would like to again congratulate our for brilliant presentation, Dr. Azullah Azad, sir. Now it's time to hear from our chairperson, Professor Kaji Tarikul Islam, sir. He is a most honorable and he is a teacher of all of us. So I'd like to invite Professor Kaji Tarikul Islam, sir, to have a comment regarding today's presentation and conclude today's session.
Assalamu alaikum and good evening. Thank you very much. Before I say something regarding the presentation, I could not check my temptation to say few things about Professor Azizul Azad, because he worked with me in Rajshahi Medical College when I was there, and there is no doubt, and everybody knows about him. He is a brilliant chap, academic, very academic. Though he is working in Rajshahi, but it is the light when it lit. From very far away, you can see this. আমি যদি বাংলায় বলি, সূর্যের আলো যখন উঠে তখন কেউ হাত দিয়ে কিন্তু এই আলোটাকে ঠেকায় রাখতে পারে না। আমি অসাম, ব্রিলিয়ান্ট, আউটস্ট্যান্ডিং এই সমস্ত শব্দ সবাই বলে, কিন্তু আমি বলবো যে আমার আসলে সব শব্দ সবার বলা হয়ে গেছে। আমি আজাদকে আমার মানে ফ্রম দ্য কোর অফ মাই হার্ট সে দুইটা উইং এর উপরে কথা বলেছে। অ্যাডাল্ট ভ্যাকসিনেশন কি, বাংলাদেশে কি কি অ্যাভেলেবল, কখন দেওয়া উচিত, and when not to give, when you give, what could be the hazards. Excellently, it is the part one. And the second part, he did not enter into the pathophysiology, how this DNA vaccine and RNA vaccine and this vector virus vector, this pathophysiology, if he starts talking on this, I think the total lecture would have been 1.5 hours. So by compromising that part, he has enlightened the types and how it is working. I think it is really a very brilliant and nice lecture in a span of short time, like 40 minutes or 45 minutes. And he touched every portion of adult vaccination. I think it will help all of us. We know this, but when we go for practice, when we go for doing all this, we should remember this important instruction and say, this is why we make CME, because CME is for updating. Continuous professional development is very important for every body of us. So I will talk on two issues regarding his presentation, only two, because it was very good. I have nothing to add on, but for explanation. Number one, when Oxford first time, they in the lecture, Azad told very clearly that the first dose was half dose. Actually, Sarah Gilbert, one of the pioneer of the scientists in the Oxford, in her interview, she told that they were in the start. It is, I think, in the June, July. They were in the start, and all of a sudden, the number of the population they will vaccinate and the production they have done, it becomes shortened. So they reduced the dose to half. It was total incidental, accidental, or whatever you call this. But fortunately or unfortunately, this is a story. আমরা হয়তো মরে যাব, কিন্তু এই গল্প সারা জীবন থেকে যাবে যে অক্সফোর্ডের এইটা একটা কাহিনী। পরে তারা দেখলো যে হাফ ডোজে দেওয়ার পরেও এটার অ্যাচিভমেন্ট একটা, মানে ওয়ার্ল্ডে যারা এটা ডিক্লারেশন দেন যে এটা ক্লিয়ার দেওয়া যাবে, তারা বললো 50% অ্যাচিভমেন্ট হলেই তো এটা দেওয়া যাবে। হাফ ডোজে যখন তারা দেখছে যে ইট হ্যাজ কাম টু দিস লেভেল, তখন তারা সাহস পেল, ইয়েস, নাও ক্যান গিভ দি 2 ডোজেস, কিন্তু তাহলে আমরা একটু ওয়াইড অ্যাপার্টে দিতে পারি। হোয়াট Professor Khan, Abul Kalam Azad was telling, 90 days, দ্যাট মিনস এটা 12 সপ্তাহ 7-12 দিন পরে, অর্থাৎ 12 উইকস অ্যাপার্টে এটার ম্যাক্সিমাম লেভেল অফ দি সেকেন্ড ডোজে আমরা অ্যান্টিবডিটা পাবো। সো এই গল্পটা বলার উদ্দেশ্য, যেহেতু এটা অনেকে জানেন, কিন্তু এটা নিয়ে কেন এটা হয়েছে, কেন এটা হয়েছে, অ্যাকচুয়ালি the people they confess it, and this is the only company ever, they are very clear cut in their paper, in very clear cut in their submission, preprint, as well as in the transparency. This is the only company, Oxford AstraZeneca, তাদের এখানে কোথাও কোনো রকম কোনো লুকাচুপির বিষয় নাই। সবচেয়ে বড় কথা, এই একমাত্র কোম্পানি যারা বা একমাত্র ভ্যাকসিন যারা 14 দিনের মাথায় ট্রান্সমিশন হয় কিনা প্রতিটি 40,000 রোগীরই থার্ড ফেজে গিয়া তারা কিন্তু সোয়াব নিয়ে চেক করেছে। তাহলে এখানে কিন্তু আমি একটা এক্সট্রা বেনিফিট পাচ্ছি, যে ট্রান্সমিসিবিলিটি কিন্তু এখানে আমরা মাস্ক পরবো সবই ঠিক আছে, কিন্তু ওরা কিন্তু এইটা দেখেছে যেটা অন্য কোনো ভ্যাকসিনের বেলায় এই জায়গাটা স্ট্রংলি তারা বলতে পারছে না, কারণ দে ডিড নট ডু ইট। এই একটা কথা বলার ছিল। বাংলাদেশের প্রেক্ষাপটে আজকে ভ্যাকসিন আসছে, যেহেতু আমি ন্যাশনাল টেকনিক্যাল কমিটির সঙ্গে সম্পৃক্ত, ভ্যাকসিনের ন্যাশনাল ভ্যাকসিন ডিপ্লয়মেন্টের একটা বিশাল 100 পাতার ওই জিনিসটাকে আমি পড়েছি এবং এটা সরকারকে জমা দেওয়া হয়েছে। আমাদের দেশে একটা জায়গায় আমরা দুর্বলতার জায়গাতে আছি, হোপফুলি পাইলটিং এর মধ্যে এটা অনেকটাই কভার করে যাবে। এটাকে বলে ড্রাই রান বা মহড়া, ভ্যাকসিনের মহড়া। এই ড্রাই রানটা আমাদের দেশে হয়নি। এটা যদি হতো আমরা খুশি হতাম, কিন্তু এটাকে একটু মডিফাই করে এটাকে করা হয়েছে যে পাইলট প্রজেক্ট। যেমন আপনারা দেখবেন পত্রিকায় আসছে যে প্রথমেই তারা 100 বা 200 লোককে দিয়ে অবজার্ভ করবে 7 দিন, 500 লোককে দিয়ে আরো 7 দিন, যদি কোনো রকম কোনো বড় ধরনের কিছু না হয়, দেন দে উইল গো ফর mass vaccination by the first or second week of February. I think আমরা তো সামনের দিনে অপেক্ষায় থাকব, দেরি করব। তবে হ্যাঁ, অনেকে কোশ্চেন করেছেন, আজাদ চমৎকার করে উত্তর দিয়েছে যে জনসন এন্ড জনসন এবং যদি নোভাভ্যাক্স এগুলা আসতে হয়তো আরো অনেক দেরি, কিন্তু আমরা নিশ্চয়ই অপেক্ষা করব না। এবং এই সিঙ্গেল ডোজ ভ্যাকসিনের জন্য দেরি করার চেয়ে আমার প্রোটেকশন কেন? আমার প্রোটেকশন এই জন্য যে আমরা যদি দেশের সব মানুষকে অর্থাৎ 70% মানুষকে আওতায় আনতে পারি, তাহলে বাকি 30% হার্ড ইমিউনিটি হলে দেশের মানুষ আমরা স্বাভাবিক জীবনে ফিরে যেতে পারবো। মানুষকে এই জিনিসটা বোঝানো অত্যন্ত জরুরি দরকার। কেউ নেগেটিভ কথা আমরা যেন না বলি, ভ্যাকসিনের অমুক হবে তমক হবে এগুলো গল্প যেন আমরা না করি। আসলে ভ্যাকসিনে কোনো সেরকম সাইড এফেক্ট অ্যাটলিস্ট উই ক্যান সে, যেমন ফ্রায়াল পার্সনের উপরে নরওয়েতে 29 জন মানুষ মারা গেছে, এই জিনিসটা দিস ইজ এ টোটালি ব্যাচের প্রবলেম হতে পারে। যেমন 0.3 ml এর সঙ্গে ওদের সাপ্লাই করা 1.8 ml একটা স্যালাইন ওরা দিয়েছে, এটা কিন্তু প্রিমিক্স করে তারপরে দিতে হয়। যদি সিরিঞ্জে টেনে নেয় তাহলে কিন্তু কি হবে উই ডু নট নো। কিন্তু অ্যাস্ট্রাজেনেকার ভ্যাকসিন যেটা আমাদের দেশে এখন চলে এসছে, এটা আমরা মনে করি আজকের প্রেজেন্টেশনটা এত সময়োচিত এবং ইট ইজ রিয়েলি টাইম বাউন্ড। এবং যে শব্দটা আমি আজাদের জন্য বলতে চাচ্ছিলাম সেটা হচ্ছে হিজ লেকচার ওয়াজ স্পেল বাউন্ড। এবং আমি সত্যি মানে গর্ববোধ করি যে হি ইজ এ ভেরি গুড টিচার, ভেরি গুড একাডেমিশিয়ান। আজকে এসিপির প্ল্যাটফর্মে হি হ্যাজ শোন all his unique presentation and I congratulate him. এবং সবচেয়ে বেশি আমি বলবো প্রফেসর নাজমুল হাসান যে এই আজকে 11th একটা সেশন with his team, he is devoted to this. I must congratulate Professor Nazmul Hassan as the governor, sitting governor, and I feel proud to be the past governor, that he is doing much more better than the previous days. And সত্যি কথা বলতে কি, coming days, Professor Abul Kalam Azad will take over this responsibility, and we will be waiting to see much more effective ACP activities. সবাইকে অনেক অনেক শুভেচ্ছা জানাচ্ছি। খায়ের আবুল কালাম আজাদ এবং সহ আমাদের প্যানেল ছিলেন, আমি আনোয়ারুল, বারি, ডক্টর প্রিন্স, সবাইকে তাদের নিজস্ব জায়গায় খুব ভালোভাবে প্রত্যেকটা সেশন, আমি তো অলমোস্ট 11টার মধ্যে বোধহয় 7 থেকে 8টাতে আমি মানে শুনেছি, দেখেছি, এবং এর প্রত্যেকটাই সময় মতো আরম্ভ হয়। এবং আমরা এই যে আজকে যেমন 10টা 20 বেজে গেছে, আমরা চেষ্টা করি 10টা থেকে 10:15টার মধ্যে শেষ করতে। সো দিস ইজ ভেরি নাইস। আমি মনে করি যে ওয়ান অফ দ্য বিউটিফুল সেশন দ্যাট উই হ্যাভ ফিনিশড। ভবিষ্যতে আমরা আরো ভালো কিছু দেখব। এই বলে আজকের প্রোগ্রাম এখানেই শেষ করছি। সবার মঙ্গল কামনা করছি, সুস্থতা কামনা করছি। সবাই অন্তত ভ্যাকসিন শরীরে না যাওয়া পর্যন্ত যেন সুস্থ থাকেন এবং ভ্যাকসিন পাওয়ার পরেও স্বাস্থ্যবিধি মেনে চলবেন। কারণ হচ্ছে এইটার কোনো বিকল্প নেই। হয়তো আমাদের আগামী 1টি বা 2টি বছর এই মাস্ক, হাত ধোয়া এবং সামাজিক দূরত্ব, এই তিনটাই আমাদের মেনটেন করতে হবে। থ্যাংক ইউ ভেরি মাচ। থ্যাংক ইউ এভরিবডি। And I conclude this session.
Thank you, sir.
Sadly, we have come to the end of today's program. As always, we have learned so many important things from Sir today. Many thanks to the speaker, the chair, the panelist, and last but not the least, the moderator, sir, for managing time for this program from their very busy schedule. I would like to thank all the audience who were with us throughout the event, especially those who asked very interesting questions. Hope you got your answers. If you joined late or couldn't see the whole program, there is no need to be worried. You will find the whole program on the YouTube right after the live session finishes. There will be no health talk program until the March of this year. So, until then, take care and good night.